Have you ever felt like you went into a relationship as one person? Maybe somebody happy, laid back, full of passion, and you came out an extremely irritated person all the time. Well, if you've ever felt like you've lost the best pieces of yourself in a toxic relationship and you still can't seem to get them back, you're going to want to watch this video. So in the first half of the video, I want to talk about how the toxic relationship or how toxic manipulators cause you to lose the best pieces of yourself. And in the second half of the video, which is the most important, I'm going to talk about how you can get them back. Okay. I just want to start with the fact that the reality is that we are all responsible for how we choose to be. I get that. Okay. And anyone that spends their life blaming everything on someone else is never going to grow. Okay. I do want to state that that's how I feel. However, I also recognize that if you are in a relationship with somebody that is an emotional abuser, they have a big part to play in what happens to you. Okay. I think people that are watching this video understand that malignant narcissists don't like to see people happy. And when they see somebody close to them, a family member, and sometimes it's just one family member. Okay, sometimes how they treat family members is different depending on the role that they've assigned each family member. So if you are the scapegoat, and you could be the scapegoat as a child, or you could be the scapegoat as a sibling, or you can be a scapegoat in an intimate relationship. But if you are in that role as scapegoat, they are the ones that the toxic person needs to stamp out their happiness. And so what happens is every time you're happy, it's met with fighting. Every time you're happy, you're insulted. Or every time you're happy, you suffer the emotional torture of the silent treatment. So the crazy thing about punishing somebody when they're happy in those ways is the person is never saying, don't be happy. There's never like a verbal contract. It's all this underlying, under the radar, psychological communication that's taking place on a subconscious level. The person that's getting hurt every time they're happy, their brain makes a paired association that happiness causes pain. And once that paired association is created, your brain will discourage you from doing anything that causes you or enables you to feel happy. So it does that because it gets a program through chronic and consistent conditioning, right? By having their happiness repeatedly met with unhappiness, a program is formed that happiness is dangerous. And once that association is in your subconscious programming, you will do everything you can to not be happy without even realizing it. And I see this a lot with people that are out of the relationship and they come to me for coaching and they're like, Michele, I'm not even, I know that I wasn't allowed to be happy back then. I know that this person didn't allow me to be happy, but they're not in my life anymore. Now I'm not letting me be happy. And the reason that's taking place is because now you're living in harmony with a belief that was planted in you. The person's gone, but the belief stays. So that's another reason why you lose those good qualities. And then on top of it, you are rewarded for being irritated. Okay, now you're probably thinking, Michele, I never got rewarded. Let me define what I mean by you were rewarded. Okay, so let's say you're happy. And the happier you are, the more miserable the other person is, and the more miserable they're making you. The second you blow up, the second you stop being happy, the second you are totally irritated beyond belief, what happens? Isn't it true that the other person suddenly is calm and they back off? And now they're not hitting you with so much attacks or so much meanness or abuse, and now they suddenly seem happy? It's a subtle thing, but it's in your brain, it's a reward because it's a let up of abuse. And when you're undergoing chronic abuse, and chronic insults and chronic attitude and negative energy, a let up feels good. Your brain is smart. It starts associating, I get angry, there's peace. And it starts doing it faster and faster. You're starting to get that peace faster and faster. And you're being conditioned to always be mad, angry, irritable, and in a bad mood. The third way that toxic manipulators cause you to stay in an irritated state and in a total lack of unhappiness is by using you to regulate themselves. And this kind of goes along with what I just said, but the whole thing is that they're regulating how they feel with your emotional state. So if they're feeling down and you're happy, right, they will criticize you, insult you, or ignore you. Now you feel like crap, they feel better. There is always a constant emotional regulation taking place with you and the toxic person. This causes you to lose the ability to hold on to your own emotional state. It's almost like without realizing it, we have made our happiness dependent on how the other person feels. If this resonates with you, then hopefully your next step, your next desire is to want to stop that cycle. No one should be on this planet to regulate somebody else. Nobody should feel like they are not allowed to be their happy, passionate self, right? So what do you do if you're in the relationship and if you're out of the relationship in order to stay happy? Okay, if you're in the relationship, yes, you can learn how to stay happy. It is obviously more challenging because you're in a relationship with somebody that needs you to be unhappy for them to feel good. So they're not going to change. They're never going to let up with trying to get that emotional regulation to take place again. But if you recognize that this is happening, then you start to realize that you are allowed to be you. You have to start realizing that how they feel and how you feel, how they respond and how you respond, do not always have to be the same. It's so easy for victims of narcissistic abuse to look at the toxic person and say, God, they don't allow me to have my own opinion. They don't allow me to have my own perspective. Guess what? Victims of narcissistic abuse have to learn to allow the toxic person to have their own perspective as well, even if that perspective is wrong. So in other words, if the toxic person is accusing you of being in a bad mood when you're not, right? It's just them projecting onto you. If you really believe that they're allowed to have their perspective and you are allowed to have yours, you won't need to convince them that that's not truth, especially if you know they don't listen to you anyway. You won't feel like you don't know who you are just because they're accusing you of something falsely. You'll know who you are. If you really believe that, you'll be able to notice the attack or the false accusation or the false reality that you're noticing, and you'll say, well, that's their perspective. They're saying I'm a horrible mom, or I'm a horrible dad, or I'm a horrible spouse, or I'm a horrible this. That's their perspective. Doesn't mean you like it. Understand that allowing people to have different perspectives has nothing to do with agreeing with the perspective. It's just about letting them exist. You don't like that perspective that they have of you, but you can't change it, right? They've chosen to have that. You have a history of trying to show them that it's false and they don't listen. So that's their perspective. But you remind yourself, I'm allowed to know that I'm a good person. I'm allowed to know that I'm a good spouse, wife, mom, dad, whatever it is. And you hold on to your reality. It takes practice if you're still in the relationship because you've probably been reacting for a long time, and reacting is automatic now, right? It's become part of your subconscious programming. How do I know that? Because you react even when you don't want to. It's that automatic. So refraining from reacting and staying in who you really are is going to take a little bit of practice, but you will get better and better at it. The good news is that as you practice doing that, you will start to feel more and more like yourself. Because I'll bet if you are reacting, you don't feel like you, right? You don't feel like the person you really are or once were. So when you stop reacting and you start allowing those different perspectives to be, and you start holding on to your reality, and you start living in harmony with your real qualities of your authentic self, you're going to start feeling like you again, whether or not you're in the relationship or not. If you are out of the relationship, and this is the part that can be really frustrating, because I've had so many clients tell me, Michele, it's like this person isn't even in my life anymore, and they're still ruining my life because I still can't feel happy. Well, if you've been conditioned to stay irritable because it kept you safe, right? It kept you safe in the sense that it lessened the abuse, or it stopped the abuse, right? Because they would reward you when you would be irritated by stopping abusing you. So your brain thinks that you're safer to be irritated. You have to recondition yourself to see that being happy is safe. And in the beginning, that's really uncomfortable. You're going to feel emotions in your body. You're going to feel like something's off, like, no, I shouldn't be doing this, or I'm doing something wrong because it feels so uncomfortable. The truth is that it feels uncomfortable because you're now going outside of the boundaries of that belief that being irritated is safe. So anytime we go outside the boundaries of a belief that's in our subconscious mind, it feels worse before it feels better. So be prepared to kind of have a hard time before it gets better. And something that helps in conditioning is if you can just find or catch yourself in moments that you're happy, or create, even better, create moments where you're happy, and then point it out to yourself, like, wow, look, I was happy. This feels amazing. Wow, I'm happy and no one's yelling at me. I'm happy and no one's giving me the silent treatment. This is so awesome. Point it out to yourself so that your body feels a different emotion when you do feel happy. And then it's about repetition. Doing that consistently until your brain catches on, like, oh, I'm allowed to be happy. I'm safe to be happy. And then it can let the irritation that was a learned behavior or a conditioned behavior, it can let it go. The last step is, if it still creeps up, which at times it will, remember that just because the emotion comes up doesn't mean that that's who you are, okay? So sometimes you kind of have to talk to it, which I know sounds a bit strange, but just kind of hear me out for a second. In other words, something I've seen very helpful is, if somebody is irritated, right? Sometimes it's a habit. Your body knows the chemical signature of being irritated, like it learned and memorized it so well, it can just give you the state of being irritated without you're even wanting it. So because it's a habit, it comes up in your body a lot. Rather than just thinking, oh, look, see, I'm still miserable, they're still controlling me. No, don't go down that rabbit hole. Simply notice it and kind of ask yourself, just kind of call it out and be like, oh, I see that irritation in me. Notice it, right? Don't deny it. Don't pretend or try to stifle it. And the second step is to ask yourself, is there really a reason right now that is giving me a reason to be irritated? Like, oftentimes, just by recognizing that you have that habit, it's easy to say, no, life is great right now. Like, this is what I'm doing right now. And it allows you to kind of make that choice to not be in that irritation. And if that's still a struggle for you, you could ask yourself, what would I want to feel right now if I had the choice? And with what comes up, your mind, again, you're showing your mind that it's a choice. Do I want it? What would I have to do to feel this? And you start working through the habit and you start rewiring a new habit. The point is I know it's frustrating to feel like you've lost pieces of yourself. And I know that it can feel like you're never going to get them back. But if you apply those tips, they really do work. If you feel like you need more than the free videos, remember that I have an online group workshop where you can start healing together with a few survivors, all on the same journey, or you can look at face-to-face coaching, whatever works best for you. So be aware of the extra helps that are out there in case you feel like the videos aren't enough.